Welcome back to Night Creepypasta Rules. Tonight, a summer lifeguard job at a small-town Ohio pool comes with 3 bizarre rules essential for survival. Because sometimes the real danger isn't drowning. It's what smiles back at you from beneath the surface. Lifeguard training teaches you that head count is sacred. Working at Havenwood Community Pool teaches you some numbers are better left uncounted, and some smiles are warnings you don't ignore. They don't put that in the Red Cross manual. Here I am, Mire Reyes, back in my small Pennsylvania hometown of Havenwood for the summer. Perched atop the slightly sticky sun-bleached plastic of the main lifeguard chair. Below me, the bright, chlorinated blue of the pool shimmers under the relentless July sun, echoing with the cacophony of splashing children, shouted games, and the rhythmic slap-slap of wet feet on hot concrete. It looks aggressively normal, cheerful even. A standard summer job to save money before heading back to college in the fall. But beneath the noise, beneath the scent of chlorine and cheap sunscreen, there's an undertone. A stillness in the deep end. A flicker in the peripheral vision. A feeling. Ever since that childhood incident at the lake, the one that left me with a lingering fear of dark water. That water holds more than just reflections. This pool, Havenwood Community Pool, built back in the optimistic 50s, has seen better decades. The concrete deck is cracked in places, tiles missing from the deep end wall like lost teeth. The pump room emitting a low, constant, slightly strained hum that vibrates through the soles of your feet if you stand too close. It has character, as my mom would say. It also has Gary. Gary Kowalski has been the pool's maintenance man since approximately the Paleozoic era. He moves with a slow, deliberate pace of someone who has seen too many summers come and go. His face a roadmap of wrinkles under a perpetually sweat-stained baseball cap, smelling faintly of chlorine, oil, and damp earth. He mostly keeps to himself, tinkering in the pump room or patching cracked tiles. Jenna, the other lifeguard on shift with me today, a townie, perpetually bored, scrolling through her phone between scans, mostly ignores him. It was Gary who gave me the unofficial orientation during my first closing shift last week, while we were wrestling the heavy pool cover into place under the buzzing security lights. "Listen up, college girl," Ed grunted, not looking at me, straining against the heavy vinyl. "This place, she's got quirks. Old pools do. Got some rules ain't in no handbook. Rules for staying out of trouble." I had half expected jokes about cleaning the filters or dealing with unruly kids. What I got was different. "One," he said, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow with a greasy forearm. "Head counts. You do 'em regular. If your number comes up +1 compared to the sign-in sheet or what Jenna counts, you report the sign-in number. Don't mention the extra. Don't go looking too hard for who it is. Just ignore the discrepancy." "Ignore it?" I'd asked, incredulous. "But safety procedure. Safety procedure here." He cut me off, his voice flat, is not pointing out things that ain't strictly solid. "Got it?" I nodded numbly, unsettled by his intensity. "2," he continued, starting to crank the pool cover reel. Sometimes one of them gets friendly. You're watching the water, and one of the swimmers catches your eye, and they smile, real wide, right at you. If it feels wrong, if it feels off, like the smile don't fit the face, you hit that whistle on your lanyard, and you don't stop blowing till the smiling stops or they look away. A long, continuous blast, understand? Don't hesitate. A smile, you'll know it if you see it," he said grimly. "Just blow the damn whistle." 3, he finished, finally securing the cover. Closing time. Everyone's gone. You check the logbook one last time for locking up, if nobody else. Not me, not Jenna, not the manager if he shows. Remember seeing that extra person you might have counted, or that weird smiler you whistled at. If there's no record, no sign-in, no towel left behind. Nothing. You scrub the log. Take the chlorine scrub brush to any notes you made about him. Any discrepancies in the count. Make the record clean before you lock that gate. Immediately. Don't leave it till morning. He wouldn't elaborate further. Just clapped me on the shoulder with a calloused hand, muttered Night, and disappeared towards the pump room. Now, sitting on the high chair, scanning the pool, the rules feel absurd in the bright sunlight. Amidst the cheerful chaos, an extra swimmer, a creepy smile, scrubbing logs. It sounds like town folklore. Ghost stories Gary tells to spook the summer hires. Yet, his seriousness felt genuine. And looking down at the shimmering, inviting water, a deeper, older part of me, the part that remembers the dark pull of the lake, feels a cold tendril of unease. A child's laughter rings out, sharp and sudden, close to my chair. But when I look down, the kids are yards away, splashing near the shallow end. Just acoustics, I tell myself. Echoes in the humid air. But I scan the pool again, counting automatically. 27 swimmers. I check the digital counter linked to the gate turnstile. 26 entries today. My breath catches. I recount. Slowly. Carefully. 27 heads bobbing in the water. My eyes meet Janice across the pool. She gives a bored wave, then looks back at her phone. She wouldn't notice. Rule 1. Don't point out the extra. The sun beats down, but a sudden chill raises goosebumps on my arms. The low hum of the pump room seems, for a moment, to deepen, like a slow underwater exhalation. The cheerful splashes and shouts feel suddenly distant, muffled. 27 swimmers, one who doesn't belong. My summer job just got a lot more complicated. The extra swimmer remained an invisible statistic for the rest of that afternoon shift. Every time I did a head count, meticulously, heart pounding, the number came up wrong by 1. 27 when the gate log showed 26 signed in. Latter, 32 when the log showed 31. Always +1. I tried desperately to spot who didn't fit, scanning faces, swimsuits, watching who interacted with whom, but they blended seamlessly. A kid splashing, an old man doing slow laps, a woman sunbathing on a floaty. Nothing overtly strange, just an extra unaccounted for presence somewhere in the bright chlorinated water. Jenna, oblivious, reported the correct number based on the gate log during our overlapping scans. I followed Rule 1, fighting back the urge to scream. No, count again. There's someone else. I parroted her number back to the empty office via the walkie-talkie clipped to my chair, the lie feeling thick and heavy on my tongue. Each time, a brief burst of static crackled back, longer than usual, before the channel cleared. Coincidence or acknowledgement? The psychological toll was immediate. Every shadow on the pool bottom looked like a submerged figure. Every ripple seemed unnatural. My lifeguard training warred constantly with Gary's cryptic rule. Duty demanded I account for every single person in the water. The rule demanded I deliberately ignore one. Failure in my job meant someone could drown. Failure to follow Gary's rule. The implied consequence felt far colder, deeper. My past water trauma resurfaced. Not as panic, but as a hyper-vigilant dread. A feeling that the water itself held a hidden danger. I was now being forced to ignore. As the afternoon wore on, the sun dipping lower, casting long shadows across the pool deck, I felt watched. Not by the patrons, but by the water. When I scanned the deep end, the light refracting off the surface seemed to warp subtly, creating shapes that weren't quite reflections. A faint, almost inaudible humming sound seemed to emanate from the main drain grate whenever I looked directly at it. Then I saw him, or thought I did, near the edge of the crowded shallow end, mostly obscured by splashing kids, was a figure standing unnaturally still, water only up to their waist. Male, pale skin, dark hair, slicked back. Nothing overtly strange except the water around him wasn't rippling correctly. The splashes from the kid seemed to avoid that small patch of water, and he was looking directly at my lifeguard stand. My breath hitched. Was this the one? The extra? As I focused, trying to get a clearer look through the shifting bodies and splashing water, the figure slowly raised its head further and smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was too wide, too symmetrical, held absolutely rigid. The teeth looked unnaturally white, perfectly even, and the eyes above the smile were dark, fixed on mine, holding no warmth, no humor, only a kind of cold, ancient amusement. It felt less like a greeting and more like recognition, like it knew I saw it, like it knew I knew it didn't belong. Rule 2. If the extra swimmer smiles directly at you, blow the whistle, and keep blowing. Panic, cold and immediate, bypass thought. My hand flew to the whistle around my neck before the full horror of the smile could register. Before I could second guess, I put it to my lips and blew. A piercing, continuous shriek cut through the cheerful poolside noise. Patrons flinched, startled, looking around. Kids stopped splashing, confused. Jenna looked up sharply from her phone, annoyed. I kept blowing, eyes locked on the figure in the shallow end. The whistle's blast echoing painfully in my own ears. The effect on the figure was immediate and bizarre. The unnatural smile didn't vanish, but it seemed to flicker, like a bad TV signal. The edges of the figure blurred slightly, the water around it churning unnaturally for a split second. It recoiled, not physically stumbling back, but more like an image losing focus. Its dark eyes widening slightly, the amusement replaced by something that looked like surprise, annoyance. I kept the whistle going, pouring all my fear and adrenaline into the sound. The figure wavered again, then smoothly, silently, submerged beneath the surface, vanishing instantly amidst the legs of the other swimmers. I finally lowered the whistle, gasping for breath, my ears ringing. Several patrons were staring at me now, annoyed or concerned. Jenna was already stomping over. "Maya, what the hell was that?" she demanded, hands on her hips. "You trying to deafen everyone? See something?" I thought I saw someone struggling. I lied, my voice shaky. Near the shallow end. False alarm. Jenna scanned the area, then looked back at me, unconvinced. "Right, false alarm that required bursting everyone's eardrums." She rolled her eyes. "Try to keep it together, Reyes. It's just a pool." She stumped back to her chair, muttering about newbie nerves. But I knew what I'd seen, and I knew the whistle had worked. It had disrupted something, driven it back. The cold dread remained, but now it was mixed with a terrifying confirmation. The rules were real. The extra swimmer was real. The rest of the shift felt like walking on eggshells over deep water. The encounter with the smiling swimmer left me deeply shaken. Sleep offered little escape, filled with dreams of unnaturally wide smiles and the feeling of cold water closing over my head. I dreaded returning to the pool, but the need for the summer job and a growing morbid compulsion to understand what was happening kept me coming back. Jenna remained oblivious, or perhaps deliberately dismissive, when I tried to talk to her again about the extra head count. The smile, the way the figure seemed to glitch when I blew the whistle. She just shrugged. "Probably the heat getting to you, Maya. Or maybe you stared at the sun too long. Weird reflections happen on the water all the time. Just focus on the actual swimmers." Her determined normalcy felt almost like gaslighting, making me question my own perceptions. Gary, however, was different. I found him one evening after closing, methodically checking the chemical balance near the deep end filter intake, the underwater lights casting eerie blue shadows. I recounted the smiling incident, the whistle, the figure vanishing. The whistle, the figure vanishing. He didn't dismiss it. He just nodded slowly, tamping down tobacco in his pipe. "Rule 2. He grunted. Good you remembered. Good you acted fast. But what was it, Gary? I pressed, needing answers. Why the smile? Why the whistle? He lit his pipe, the match flare momentarily illuminating his weathered face, making the shadows under his eyes seem deeper. Don't rightly know what it is, he admitted, puffing slowly. Older than this pool, I reckon. Older than the town, maybe. Some say it's drawn here. Likes the water. Likes the crowds. He paused. The smiling. That's how it tries to hook you. Get you to acknowledge it proper, see it as real. Like inviting a stray cat in, except this one ain't friendly. And the whistle. Sound, Gary said vaguely, tapping his pipe. Sharp sound. Continuous. Disrupts things. Breaks the focus. Sends them back where they came from for a bit. Old-timers' trick for dealing with unpleasantness. Near water around here. Guess it still works. He gave me a sharp look. Just make sure you keep blowing till it looks away or goes under. Hesitate. It might. Latch on. Latch on. The phrase sent a chill down my spine. And rule 3? I asked quietly, scrubbing the logbook. Gary sighed, exhaling smoke. That's insurance. See, it wants to be here. Wants to be counted, he remembered. Be part of the record. Makes it solider, somehow. If you see it, if you interact. But no one else does. And there's no proof in the logs. It kinda glitches out. Can't quite anchor itself proper when the day's tally don't match reality. Scrubbing the book clean. Making sure there's no mention. No odd numbers. It helps keep it from getting a permanent foothold. He looked towards the dark, still water of the pool. Failed to do that? Well, heard tell of folks seeing the same extra face day after day. Clear each time. Until maybe they ain't the extra one anymore. His words were terrifying, hinting at a slow, insidious replacement. I spent the next few days researching Havenwood's history at Sarah's library. Wrong character. Fix, town library. Looking for drownings, disappearances tied to the pool site, or local water spirit folklore. Found stories of the creek that used to run where the pool now stood. Legends of something that lured children to the water's edge. Mentions of baptisms gone wrong centuries ago. Nothing concrete, but enough to feed the dread. The test of Rule 3 came at the end of a long, sweltering Saturday. Massive crowds, multiple saves, frayed nerves. Jen and I were the last ones out, double-checking the locker rooms, collecting forgotten towels as Gary finished securing the pump room. Ready to lock up? Jenna called, juggling towels and pool noodles. Almost, I said, my hand hovering over the daily sign-in out logbook on the counter. Just need to reconcile the final count. My private tally, kept meticulously throughout the day, showed 157 patrons. The official sign-in out sheet, however, only accounted for 156, plus 1, again. And earlier that afternoon, I was sure I'd seen a fleeting glimpse of that too-wide smile from a figure half hidden in the splashing chaos near the diving board. I hadn't needed the whistle this time. It vanished too quickly, but it had been there. Jenna came over, glanced at the log. Looks about right, she said casually. 156, busy day. You remember seeing anyone weird? Like that smiler you mentioned? My breath caught. No, I lied. My voice tight. Didn't see anyone unusual today. Don't let anyone else remember them. Jenna shrugged. Good. Probably just stress then. Let's go. I'm starving. She headed towards the staff exit. Gary poked his head out of the pump room. All clear? All clear? Jenna called back. My eyes were glued to the logbook. The discrepancy. The memory of the smile. Rule 3. If no one else remembers them after the pool clears, scrub the logbook. Now, Jenna and Gary were walking towards the main gate, waiting for me to lock the office. I had maybe 30 seconds. My heart hammered, looking around frantically. My eyes landed on the industrial chlorine cleaner Gary used for scrubbing pool tiles. Left momentarily on the counter. Hands shaking. I grabbed the bottle, popped the cap, ignoring the acrid smell. I poured a small amount of the potent liquid directly onto the final tally line and signature area of the logbook page. The blue ink instantly blurred, ran, dissolved into an illegible smear under the harsh chemical. I quickly blotted it with a paper towel, leaving only a damp, bleached stain where the day's final record had been. The sharp, stinging scent of chlorine filled the small office. "Maya, you coming?" Jenna called impatiently from the gate. "Coming!" Jenna called impatiently from the gate. I called back, quickly closing the damaged logbook, shoving the chlorine bottle back under the counter. I locked the office door, heart pounding with adrenaline and guilt. I had just actively falsified, destroyed an official record. Walking towards the gate, joining Jenna and Gary under the buzzing security lights. The large pool lay dark and still behind us, reflecting the twilight sky. But looking at its placid surface, I didn't feel relief. I felt the cold certainty that I had just erased the proof of the entity's visit, effectively resetting the board for its next attempt. And the chlorine smell clinging to my fingers felt less like cleaning fluid and more like complicity. Life at the Havenwood Pool took on a sharper, more dangerous edge after I deliberately scrubbed the logbook. The near-daily headcounts remained a source of low-level anxiety, sometimes coming up +1, sometimes unnervingly, matching the official tally exactly, leaving me wondering if that was now the anomaly. I grew hyper-aware of smiles, scanning faces constantly, whistle always ready, though the wide, unnatural grin didn't reappear immediately. It felt like the entity, its attempt to anchor itself thwarted by the Rule 3 erasure, was regrouping, observing, by Dash and Doe. The library research yielded little more, just fragmented folklore about water-bound entities in the region, things that reflected desires or mimic shapes, often tied to places of accidental death or deep sorrow. Hezekiah Black Mire's hidden journal. Wrong story. My research into the pool's construction revealed it was built over a section of filled-in marshland adjacent to the old creek bed known locally centuries ago as Weeping Mire. Several undocumented drownings were rumored to have happened there. Ground Zero. Jenna, thankfully, seemed to have forgotten or dismissed the climax incident by the deep end and my subsequent questions about the logbook. Or perhaps some part of the phenomenon actively made people forget, reinforcing Rule 3's necessity. She remained friendly, oblivious, focused on her tan and her phone between scans. Her normalcy felt both grounding and terrifyingly fragile. Gary, however, knew I knew, and he knew I had acted. Our interactions became sparser, weighted with unspoken understanding. He'd extra chlorine tablets near my station without comment, or accidentally leave the pump room unlocked when he knew I wanted to check the ancient rattling machinery for anomalies after hours. He wouldn't offer answers, but he facilitated my vigilance. One afternoon, watching me meticulously scan the deep end, he came over, ostensibly to check the drains. "Water's tricky," he muttered, not looking at me. "Shows you what it wants you to see, especially still water." It felt like both a warning and a clue. The entity's presence began to manifest in subtler, more unnerving ways. Not direct smiles or extra bodies, but ripples. I'd be scanning the pool, see a distinct ripple spread across a perfectly calm section of water where no swimmer was near, as if something unseen had surfaced and submerged. A child's toy, left floating, would suddenly glide across the pool against the faint breeze towards the main drain. And sounds, sometimes putting my ear near the drain opening or the filter intake late at night. I could hear faint, melodic humming, almost like the folk song from the other story. "No? Focus, Maya!" Faint, melodic humming, seemingly coming from deep within the pipes, quickly muffled if I moved suddenly. And the reflections. Rule 2 warned against lingering at the West Hall mirror in the library story. Here, the mirror was the pool surface itself. Gary's warning echoed. "Shows you what it wants you to see, I started noticing how reflections behaved strangely near the deep end drain, or in certain patches of water. When the sun hit them just right, my own reflection sometimes seemed momentarily distorted, older, features blurred, or worse, sometimes the reflection of a swimmer behind me would briefly show someone else entirely. A pale face with dark hair, wide eyes, before snapping back to normal when I turned. The psychological toll mounted. Was I becoming obsessed, seeing patterns where none existed? Or was the entity adapting, becoming suppler, trying to breach my defenses through suggestion and environmental manipulation, now that direct confrontation had failed? My past trauma, the fear of water, of what lurks beneath the surface, made me susceptible. Was I a reliable witness anymore? One sweltering evening, just before closing, only a handful of swimmers remained. Jenna was taking her break. Gary had already left. I sat on the high chair, watching the last few laps, feeling the familiar end-of-day exhaustion mixed with heightened dread. The setting sun cast long, distorted shadows across the water. That's when I saw it. Not an extra swimmer, not a smile, but something potentially worse. In the deep end, near the main drain, the water began to darken. Not a shadow, but an oily black patch spreading slowly across the surface, like ink bleeding into the clear, chlorinated blue. It started small, maybe a foot across, then slowly widened, absorbing the light, perfectly circular. My breath caught. It looked sickeningly like the black stain from the apartment cleaner story. No. Focus. It looked utterly unnatural. A void opening in the water. Then from the center of the black patch, a single pale hand, fingers long and skeletal, broke the surface, reaching upwards silently towards the twilight sky. My hand flew to my whistle, ready to blow, ready for Rule 2. But this wasn't a smile. This wasn't an extra. This felt different, newer, like the library clock preparing to chime. Stop it, Maya. Like something else was being triggered. The rules covered known phenomena, but what happened when something new crawled out of the pool's dark history? My blood ran cold. The hand remained, fingers slightly curled, water sheeting off it, waiting in the deepening gloom. The hand remained, poised just above the surface of the darkening water, fingers slightly curled, water sheeting off unnaturally pale skin. It didn't move, didn't twitch. It just waited. Below it, the pool water continued to corrupt, the oily black stain spreading slowly outwards from the main drain in the deep end, absorbing the faint security lights, turning that section of the pool into a miniature abyss. My lifeguard training screamed protocols. Potential submerged victim. Activate emergency procedures. But my gut, chilled by Gary's warnings, by the memory of the impossible smile, screamed wrongness. This wasn't a swimmer in distress. This was something else clawing its way out. My hand instinctively went to the whistle. Rule 2 was for the smile, the direct engagement. This felt different, more primal. Still, it was the only tool I had that had previously worked. I raised it to my lips, took a deep breath, and blew. Not the short blasts for attention, but a long, piercing, continuous shriek of sound echoing across the deserted pool deck. The hand reacted. It flinched, fingers tightening into a fist for a split second. The black stain around it seemed to momentarily stop spreading, its surface rippling violently as if disturbed by the frequency. But the hand didn't retract. The whistle, while clearly unpleasant to it, wasn't enough to repel this more tangible manifestation. It had breached some barrier. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. Rule 1 was irrelevant. Rule 2 was insufficient. Rule 3 was for after. What now? My eyes darted around the empty pool deck, searching for... what? A weapon? Help. Then my gaze fell on the low brick building housing the pump room and chemical storage, where Gary kept the pool operational. Gary's words echoed. Pool built over something else. Old Weeping Mire. Water's tricky. Drains the deep point. And something else he'd muttered while cleaning the filters. Iron settles things. Iron settles new. Iron and the drain. Was the entity anchored there? Could I fight it through the pool's own system? It was a crazy, desperate idea, born of terror and fragmented folklore, leaving the hand slowly uncurling its fingers again in the deep end. I scrambled down from the lifeguard chair and sprinted across the damp concrete towards the pump room building. The heavy door was unlocked. Gary often left it so for late checks. Inside, the rhythmic, heavy hum of the main circulation pumps filled the air, vibrating through the concrete floor. Pipes snaked across the walls. Valves gleamed dully under bare bulbs. The sharp, clean scent of chlorine was almost overwhelming here, but tonight it felt like a weapon. I scanned the complex system. Filters, heaters, chemical feeders. My lifeguard certification included basic pool operation, CPO training. I knew the layout. There, the main chlorine feeder valve, currently set for standard nighttime circulation. Beside it, the emergency intake for sodium bisulfate. And further down, almost hidden behind a rusting pressure tank, an old, barely labeled valve connected to a separate line Gary had once called the iron pre-filter, supposedly installed decades ago to deal with mineral content from the old Mire spring, rarely used now. Iron settles things. Could I flood the deep end drain area with a high concentration of chlorine and whatever residual iron was in that old line? Shock the system? Attack the anchor point? My hands flew across the control panel, overriding the timers, manually activating the deep end return jets. Then, I grabbed the main chlorine feeder valve, cranking it far past its normal setting, hearing a distinct increase in the suction sound from the pump as it drew in the concentrated chemical. Finally, I reached for the rusted iron pre-filter valve. It resisted, stiff from disuse. I put my shoulder into it, straining. A screech of protesting metal echoed in the small room as the valve finally gave way, opening the old line. I didn't know what concentration would result, or how fast it would reach the deep end. Praying it was fast enough, I scrambled back out of the pump room towards the pool deck, heart pounding. The black stain in the deep end had spread further now, maybe 6 feet across. The hand was still there, fingers slowly flexing. As I watched, horrified, a second hand, identical to the first, began to emerge slowly from the blackness beside it. It was strengthening, manifesting more fully. Then, the water around the main drain began to churn. A low rumbling sound came from the pool floor, followed by the powerful surge of the return jets activating nearby. Highly chlorinated water, maybe carrying traces of iron sediment, began pouring directly into the corrupted area. The reaction was instantaneous and violent. A high-pitched, unearthly shriek echoed from the deep end, seeming to come from the water itself. The black stain convulsed, boiling, churning, as the concentrated chemicals hit it. The two pale hands flinched violently, spasming, fingers clawing at the water as if burned. The acrid smell of intense chlorine burn filled the air, stinging my eyes even from the pool edge. The entity shrieked again, a sound of pure agony and rage that scraped against my bones. The black stain seemed to recoil inwards, collapsing towards the main drain like water circling a plug hole. The two hands thrashed, then were abruptly pulled down, vanishing beneath the churning, chemically clouded water. A final violent surge of black, oily water erupted from the main drain, splashing onto the pool deck, then subsided, leaving only swirling, cloudy water and the overpowering stench of chlorine shock. The stain was gone. The hands were gone. The hands were gone. I stood at the edge of the pool, shaking, gasping in the chemical-laden air, staring into the now empty deep end. The water slowly settled, cloudy, but no longer black. I had done it. I had forced it back. Attacked its anchor point using the pool's own system, Gary's cryptic lore, and desperate improvisation. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the pool felt violated, the water tainted. The silence that followed heavy with the memory of that shriek, promising that this fight was far from over. The overpowering smell of chlorine gradually dissipated into the cool night air, leaving behind the usual poolside scents, now tinged with something metallic and vaguely swampy near the deep end drain. I stood by the pool edge for a long time, watching the water settle, my adrenaline slowly ebbing, replaced by a deep, bone-chilling exhaustion and the tremor in my hands. But I knew what lay beneath, what I had just forced back. Headlights swept across the parking lot. My heart leaped, thinking it was returning, before I recognized the familiar rumble of Gary's beat-up pickup truck. He shouldn't be here. Closing was over an hour ago. He climbed out, his silhouette moving stiffly under the security lights, heading straight for the pump room, then stopping abruptly. Sniffing the air, he turned, his gaze finding me standing alone by the deep end. "Maya?" he called out, his voice rough with concern. Or maybe suspicion. What in tarnation is that smell? Thought I heard the shock cycle kick on from my place. There was no point lying, not entirely. "Gary," my voice was shaky. Something came out of the main drain. A stain, black. Then hands. I gestured vaguely at the deep end. I hit the emergency chlorine feed for this section. Opened that old iron valve you mentioned once. Gary's face, illuminated now, as he walked closer, was pale beneath his usual tan. He stared at the deep end, then at me, his eyes wide with something I hadn't seen before. Genuine fear. "Hands," he whispered. "Plural. Oh, Lord help us, it's getting stronger. Bolder." He rushed past me to the pool edge, peering down at the main drain, then scanned the surrounding water. "You shocked it? With the iron line open?" I nodded numbly. He shook his head slowly, running a hand over his face. "Kit, you're lucky you ain't breathing pool water right now. What you did? Yeah, maybe you drove it back. Iron burns him. High chlorine disrupts him. Especially near the drain. That's where the mire spring feeds in strongest, where it likely anchors." He looked at me again, his expression grim. "But you just made it mad. Real mad. Like poking a hornet's nest with a stick." He explained more then, his usual reticence washed away by the clear escalation of danger. The extra swimmer wasn't just one entity, he suspected, but manifestations of the Maya thing, the old spirit or collective consciousness, tied to the swamp buried beneath the pool. It fed on inattention, on being accepted into reality. The rules were simple, passed down through caretakers and lifeguards. Don't validate its presence, Rule 1. Disrupt its connection attempts, Rule 2. Erase its memory from the record, Rule 3. Basic containment for minor incursions. But a physical manifestation? Hands? That Black Mire spreading? Gary shuddered. Ain't seen that since old Mr. Henderson was head lifeguard back in the 70s. He ignored a smiler too long one night. They found him. Well, they found parts of him. Near the filter tanks. My stomach turned. "So what now?" I asked, my voice small. Gary sighed, scrubbing his face. Now we clean up, and we pray. And you," he pointed a trembling finger at me, "you gotta decide. This ain't just a summer job with weird rules anymore, kid. You interacted. You fought it. It knows you proper now. You stay, you got to be ready. You leave, you run far, And don't look back, and hope it stays put. The logbook, Rule 3. I looked towards the office. The logbook, Gary, what do we write? He followed my gaze, his expression hardening. Nothing, he said firmly. Nothing, he said firmly. Loc shows pool. Closed normal time. Chemical feeders adjusted for overnight maintenance. Routine check. That's it. Rule 3 ain't just about after it clears. It's about always. Keep the record clean. Don't give it an anchor in ink. Don't give it an anchor in ink. The complicity felt heavier now. Colder. Erasing not just a head count discrepancy, but a direct, terrifying manifestation. Yet, Gary was right. Panic. Outside attention. That wouldn't help. It might even make things worse. The choice was mine. Run? Run? Flee Havenwood. Flee Pennsylvania. Try to forget the feel of that unnatural cold. The sight of that pale hand rising. Or stay. Stay. Knowing the thing in the water was real, escalating, and now aware of me, stay. Armed only with Gary's fragmented lore, a lifeguard whistle, and the knowledge of how to weaponize a pool filter, my past trauma whispered, run. Water isn't safe. But the memory of Jenna's potential danger, the thought of other unsuspecting swimmers, the image of that hand reaching. No, running felt like letting it win, like abandoning my post. I'm staying, I said, surprised at the firmness in my own voice. Tell me everything you know, Gary. Every story, every rumor, every defense. Gary looked at me for a long moment, reading the resolve in my eyes. He sighed again, a sound of infinite weariness, but nodded slowly. All right, kid, he said, turning towards the pump room. Get the scrub brushes. School's in session. First lesson. Never turn your back on the deep end drain after midnight. He handed me an old heavy iron key from his ring. And keep this with you. Belonged to Henderson. Said it kept his locker room shut tight against drafts. Summer bled into fall, the vibrant colors of the Pennsylvania woods reflecting on the pool's surface, now tinged with my constant vigilance. Jenna never came back after hearing a waterlogged version of the hand-in-the-pool story from a panicked town gossip. She finished the season making excuses, then left Havenwood for college early. Gary became my reluctant mentor, sharing fragments of lore, maintenance routines that doubled as wards, and decades of wary observation. I stayed. I worked. I watched the water. Life settled into a new, tense normal. The blatant manifestations didn't return immediately after the chlorine shock incident, but the subtle signs persisted, constant reminders. The head count was occasionally off by one. I'd note it privately, report the correct number, and increase my scans, whistle ready. Cold spots drifted in the water near the drain. Reflections sometimes flickered with impossible images seen from the corner of my eye. But I wasn't just reacting anymore. Armed with Gary's lore and my own terrifying experience, I took proactive steps. I learned the specific frequency and pattern for the whistle blast that seemed most effective at disrupting the entity's focus. A rapid, trilling sequence Gary's grandfather had supposedly learned from local Lenape elders. I kept small iron shavings, sourced from Gary's workshop, tucked into my pocket, sometimes sprinkling them discreetly near the deep end drain during closing. Remembering the old folklore about iron repelling certain spirits, I meticulously cleaned the logbook every single night, ensuring no anomalies, no discrepancies, no mention of anything unusual marred the official record. My relationship with the pool changed. It was no longer just a place of summer fun, or even just a site of potential horror. It felt like a territory I was responsible for guarding. The water a liminal space, the drains a potential gateway I had to monitor. My past fear of water hadn't vanished, but it had transformed into a focused, almost obsessive vigilance. I knew the danger was real, ancient, and patient. The true test of my new role came one crisp October evening, the last weekend before the pool closed for the season. A small group of teenagers had stayed late, splashing and laughing as twilight deepened. I watched them closely, feeling the familiar end-of-day tension rise. Head count correct. 5 teenagers. Then, I saw her, standing near the edge of the deep end. Slightly apart from the noisy group was a 6th figure, a young woman, pale, dark hair, wide eyes, smiling that slow, unnaturally wide smile directly at the youngest of the teenagers. A girl, maybe 14, who was treading water nearby, seemingly mesmerized. Rule 2. But targeting someone else. Rule 2. No hesitation this time. Before the girl could be drawn closer, before the connection could fully form, I raised my whistle. Not a panic blast, but the specific, shrilling, high-frequency pattern Gary and I had practiced. The sharp, complex series of notes cut through the evening air. The effect was immediate. The smiling woman flickered violently, her form dissolving like smoke on water. The targeted teenager blinked, shaking her head slightly as if coming out of a daze, then swam quickly back towards her laughing friends, oblivious. The other teens just looked towards me, annoyed by the noise. Pools closing in 5 minutes. I called out, my voice steady, betraying none of the ice in my veins. As the teenagers gathered their things and left, chattering noisily, I walked slowly around the pool deck, checking the perimeter, eyes scanning the darkening water. Empty. I went to the office, took out the logbook. 5 signatures on the sign-out sheet. I made my final entry. Pool cleared 19. 0. Chemicals balanced. Systems normal. Clean record. Rule 3 enacted. Later. Alone under the security lights. The pool silent and still, reflecting the first stars in its dark surface. I stood by the deep end drain. The water lapped gently against the edge. A single large bubble surfaced slowly from the drain grate and popped softly, the only sound besides the chirp of crickets in the cooling air. A sign? A breath? Or just the plumbing? I didn't know, but I touched the old iron key in my pocket, felt the cool metal of the whistle against my lips. I stood my ground, watching the water, the guardian of Havenwood Pool, bound to its secrets, keeper of its fragile peace. The water remained still. The night remained quiet. My watch continued. Maya became the vigilant guardian of Havenwood Pool, forever watching the water's hidden depths. Enjoyed this dive into small-town horror? Hit like, share, and subscribe to Night Creepypasta Rules. Stay safe near the water, and we'll see you in the next nightmare.